All right, let's get right into it. Welcome back to Ethical Point. I'm your mentor, and today we're tackling a massive dilemma for GS Paper 4.
And I'm the skeptic. Look, we're not just here to memorize textbook definitions today. We want to know how this stuff actually plays out in the real world, especially for all you future civil servants tuning in.
Exactly. We are looking at a classic ethical friction point, coercion versus undue influence in the workplace. It's a situation literally every aspiring administrator is going to face at some point, so let's not waste any time.
Okay, here's the game plan for today. We'll hit the core concepts first, look at the friction between the legal and ethical sides, run through some actual workplace case studies, and then wrap up with how to absolutely master this UPSC answer.
Right, let's start by defining the core concepts. Time for our layman's dictionary.
Because, in GS Paper 4, if you don't have conceptual clarity, you've really got nothing. So first up, autonomy.
Right, so autonomy is basically your right and your capacity to make free choices. You're making a decision based on your own rational thought with zero external pressure or fear. A healthy office? It absolutely runs on free, informed decision-making. If your autonomy is compromised, the whole ethical foundation is basically crumbling.
Makes total sense. Okay. What about human dignity? We see that phrase everywhere in public administration ethics.
Yeah, human dignity is simply valuing a person's inherent worth. Recognizing that a colleague or a citizen matters just because they're human. Unethical practices completely strip this away. When you manipulate someone, you're not treating them with dignity, you're literally just using them as a tool for your own personal gain.
Okay, but where does that manipulation even come from? I'm guessing it ties into the whole office hierarchy thing. Like, what exactly is a power imbalance? You hit the nail on the head. A power imbalance is when one person has significantly more authority than another. Think a senior officer and a junior clerk, or a mentor and a mentee. Hierarchies are totally necessary for things to get done, sure, but that natural imbalance, it can easily become a breeding ground for manipulation if the person at the top isn't ethically grounded. Which brings us to the main event of today's explainer, coercion versus undue influence.
Mentor, the hammer versus the pole.
So coercion is literally like a hammer. It's in your face, forceful, and it's all about visible threats. It's basically a do this or face the consequences situation.
Exactly. But undue influence? That's like a whisper. It's super indirect, subtle, and relies almost entirely on psychological manipulation. Instead of a threat, it usually sounds like a favor, right? Hey, do this, it'll be good for us. Coercion steals your consent using fear, but undue influence, it compromises your consent by exploiting your trust.
To really nail this down for administration, we've got to look at the law, specifically the Indian Contracts Act of 1872.
Section 15 versus 16.
Right. Section 15 says coercion is committing or threatening to commit any unlawful act to force someone into an agreement. It's flat out illegal, but Section 16 defines undue influence as a situation where one party dominates the will of another based on their relationship to get an unfair advantage. Hold on, let's define unfair advantage for a second. We need to be crystal clear on this.
Good call. Unfair advantage is the entire goal of undue influence. It means exploiting a situation, a position of power, or trusting relationship just to benefit yourself at someone else's expense. You aren't physically threatening them, you're just twisting the relationship.
So here's the big question. If both of these actions ultimately destroy an individual's free will, why is undue influence so notoriously hard to spot in an actual office? Because it wears a disguise. Coercion is loud and obvious. Undue influence hides behind polite requests, friendly career advice, or so-called professional guidance. And this perfectly highlights the legal difference. Coercion is blatantly unlawful, so the burden of proof is usually on the victim to prove they were threatened.
Oh, wow. But with undue influence, because that power imbalance is already built into the relationship, the legal burden actually shifts to the boss, right? The dominant party has to prove they didn't unfairly manipulate the junior.
Spot on, because undue influence usually falls under the category of a civil or moral wrong. Wait, one more definition check. What exactly is a civil and moral wrong?
It's an act that won't necessarily put you in handcuffs. It might not be explicitly criminal, but it completely shatters fairness, ethical duties, and trust. It's that subtle, quiet manipulation that slips right under the legal radar, but absolutely rots a workplace's ethical culture from the inside out.
All right, enough theory. Let's see how this works in the real world with some workplace case studies and administrative dilemmas. Let's do it. Future administrators, pay attention because you need to identify these immediately.
So, if a boss orders you to approve a fake, inflated bill and threatens suspension if you refuse, that's coercion. 100% fear-based.
Right, and forcing unpaid overtime by threatening to fire someone is coercion too. It completely violates their human dignity by treating them as disposable tools. But consider the more subtle scenarios. A senior officer hinting at career perks if you favor a specific vendor. That's undue influence. It's a huge abuse of trust.
Or a manager convincing you to fudge some data by dangling a promotion. There's no threat of harm, just the promise of a reward. That goes totally against fiduciary duty.
So, here's the absolute bottom line. Whether it's the loud hammer of coercion or the quiet pull of undue influence, they both lead to the exact same destination. They both equally destroy autonomy, fairness, and integrity.
Let's pivot. Mastering the UPSC answer exam strategy.
If you get a question asking you to differentiate these two concepts, remember it is typically a 10 marker. That means you only have 150 words. You literally cannot afford to ramble. Every single sentence has to punch above its weight.
So here is your strict 3-step framework for crafting a high-scoring response. Step 1. Hit them with the Indian Contracts Act definitions right away. It shows the examiner you really know your legal basis. Step 2. Contrast the explicit threat with the subtle psychological pressure, and drop in those workplace examples we just talked about. Step 3. Finish strong with a way-forward conclusion focused on real administrative solutions.
Before we look at that way forward, what is the actual antidote to this kind of workplace manipulation? Transparency and accountability, right?
Absolutely. Transparency means working out in the open, so everything you do can be scrutinized. It leaves zero dark corners for undue influence to hide. And accountability? That means taking full responsibility for those actions. When you have both, manipulation just starves.
So for that exam answer, your way forward needs to be super actionable. Managers have to set up robust grievance redressal mechanisms, basically safe spaces to report that quiet pull of influence. Push for strict transparency, build ethical leadership at the top, and make sure every single choice is based purely on merit and rules, with zero fear involved. And to perfectly wrap up your UPSC answer, you need a strong concluding thought. This quote, straight from our source material, is brilliant. A healthy work environment demands free and informed decision-making, ensuring choices are guided by merit and rules, not fear or manipulation. It's just the perfect summary.
You know, anyone can recognize a hammer when it's swinging right at them. But here's my challenge to you as we close today's explainer. As a future administrator, will you be able to spot that subtle, quiet pull of undue influence before it turns into a compromised decision? Keep your eyes open and keep your ethics grounded. We'll see you next time on Ethical Point.